Welcome everybody to Better Together Tuesdays. This is episode 2. We started this webinar when we were thinking about all of the questions that were coming to us at Missouri SBDC, as well as KC SourceLink and other organizations, and decided we needed to try to make business simple in complex times because we are living in complex times. We also realized from a quote that we read by Shelley Seifert from First Bank in St. Louis, this quote was really inspirational. Surviving and thriving in crisis is rarely a solo event. Thus the name Better Together Tuesdays. So the session is divided into 3 parts. We'll have a focus part where we talk about what the initial topic is and with our guests. And then we'll have an innovate part. And that's where we start talking about what we could do differently. And then we'll end with an engage segment, which talks about where you can go to find more information. I'm Joel Barrett. I'm a business development consultant at the Missouri Small Business Development Center. And our goal today is to give you a lot of information in a short period of time and where you can go to learn more. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Hope you learn a lot. I want to tell you a little bit about our guests today, because today we're going to be talking about unemployment. And if you are like many, many others, you're navigating that in some form, either for yourself or for your employees, trying to figure out, do I lay off my employees? Do I fire them? Do I just tell them not to come back to work? There's just a ton of questions. And so we're going to try to get through as many as we can. I have more questions that I could possibly get into one session. So we're going to dive right in. But let me tell you first about my guests today. And I'm going to do that while I share a screen so I can show you who my guests are. Let's start with Erika Bruin. She is the president of Lever One. And Erika is part of Lever One. She's a Kansas City-based professional employer organization providing human resources, payroll, and employee benefit solutions. She also serves as the president for the Kansas City chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners, as well as several other boards, both regionally and nationally. And I am going to take you then to our next guest. Our next guest is Belinda Wagoner from People US. This is an HR company that helps you grow your business by leveraging the power of people. And so welcome to Belinda as well. And then one final guest we have is Dolores, or Dee Rose, from the Missouri Department of Labor. She serves as the Strategic Communications Director for the Missouri Department of Labor, and she worked in unemployment claims processing, adjudication, and public outreach for the Division of Employment prior to becoming the Communications Director for the department. I will come back to those screens later so that you can see where we are, but welcome Erika, Belinda, and Dee.
Thank you.
So I'm going to throw a bunch of questions out, and I'll try to either address them to you or just let you chime in. But let's just start with a big one from Dee. Let me just ask you, Dee, what's the biggest question that you're getting right now in the Department of Labor?
Where's my money?
Okay, so I guess that's the question then, because we're getting that as well. Now that the dust is kind of settled from the PPP and the EIDL, the biggest question I'm getting with my clients is, where's my money? So for those that are applying for unemployment, and we've been hearing a lot of different things come out, we have information and misinformation. What is your answer to that big question of just, where's the money that I applied for?
For one, I would say be patient, because the unemployment process has not changed as far as how it works if somebody is eligible or not eligible for unemployment. While we waived the waiting week, everybody thinks that means they get paid right away. That means that we are now paying for that week as their first week of benefits, which we had not done prior to the pandemic. So they will get paid for that week rather than waiting 20 weeks to get paid for that particular week of unemployment. But that does not mean that we have waived the protest period. Unemployment is paid for by employers, not out of employees' paychecks, not out of taxes. It actually comes out of employers' accounts. So that's why there is still a protest period in place, a period of time in which to notify employers and give them that opportunity to protest. You know, we won't say either way, but sometimes one party or the other does lie to us and we find out about it during a protest period. So that protest period still does stay in place. So that's going to hold up payments automatically for there. When there is an unemployment claim, typically before all this, it was always 18 to 22 days before you would receive payment. So people asking, I applied yesterday, where's my payment today, is not helping do anything but clog up phone lines. So it's the normal process. It's going to take that long to get a claim processed.
All right, good to know. Good to know. Is it common? I've heard a lot of people say, well, I applied for unemployment and I was denied. And is that a common experience?
Yeah, and there's really kind of two parts to that. People say they're denied, but at what part are they denied? Are they ineligible because they don't have enough wage credits to be eligible to receive an unemployment claim? Or are they actually denied after we go through the process of notifying employers and find some reason why at that point their claim can be denied? So there's really kind of 2 points, and people say denied in general, and there's actually 2 different points where you could be denied unemployment benefits. 3 if you count the weekly request for payment. So there's if issues arise on the claim, but there's the first point of, are you monetarily even eligible to receive unemployment benefits?
Okay. So as small business owners, which is what we're focused on, small business owners, entrepreneurs, contract, 1099, sole proprietors, however you identify yourself as that. One of the big questions we've been getting is about, I'm self-employed or I'm a 1099 contract person. And either any 3 of you can chime in on this. What does that mean for me if I've been working solo, I've been doing all these contracts, I may or may not have been taking out my own unemployment. Is there anything available to me as that person?
I don't want to hog all the time. I can respond to that, but
Okay.
In order to be eligible for unemployment at this point, we still have the same process in place. If nobody paid in taxes, unemployment taxes for you during the base period of time, which right now, if you applied for the claim, would be from January 2019 through December of 2019. So if there aren't wages within that period and not enough wages, you would be what we call not an insured worker. You wouldn't be eligible for regular unemployment benefits. That said, there are things now in place with certain restrictions, but there are things in place under the CARES Act that allow 1099s or contractors, self-employed people to apply for unemployment. First, you have to apply for regular unemployment and get that not an insured worker notice. And then you can apply for the PUA claim, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And that is, we went live with that on last Saturday night, this past Saturday night. So now there is a place on there once a self-employed person files a regular unemployment claim, is not eligible for that, can then apply for a PUA.
Okay, good to know. Erika, you deal with a lot of small businesses, and I'm wondering, I've had this question a lot from people going, I don't know, should I lay off my employee? Should I furlough? Should I just tell them not to come back to work until things settle down? What answers do you have for that?
Yeah, thank you, Joel. We are seeing a lot of those questions as business owners try to scramble to figure out when they're going to be able to reopen, and that date is uncertain and it keeps getting extended. I would say there are options for layoffs and furlough, but not telling them or just having them not come in is not a great way to manage your employees. We are, to Dee's credit, we are seeing a lot of our laid off or furloughed workers receiving the unemployment payments already. On both Kansas and Missouri, we have workers that are getting their money much faster than some of our client employees in other states. So we are as clogged as the system may be, ahead of the game in that regard. I have the first response back from someone receiving that additional $600 as well, because that was even more delayed than the state claims. So the process is working and people are receiving the money, just not as fast and as widespread as they'd like. So we are encouraging our clients to go through that layoff process so that the employees can collect those benefits. And now we're right in the thick of, if they've received some of that government funding, recalling those workers. And so we've seen about 12 businesses recall workers just this week, which is really exciting. And they can, navigate between collecting unemployment and then working the next week very seamlessly. That's not uncommon for unemployment claims, to be subsidizing either reduced hours or no hours one week, and then they're able to work the following week. So that's a pretty common occurrence with unemployment, and they'll still receive those benefits.
Okay, thank you.
And
Belinda,
if I could I add one?
Yes, go ahead.
Could I add one thing to that? Missouri does have a program. We've had it for over 30 years. Only about half the states have this kind of a program. It's actually called shared work. And so an employer can reduce the number of hours that employees work between 20 and 40%. And still, those employees can get a partial unemployment benefit for that week, plus say the $600 federal supplement that's going on right now, in addition to keeping their regular benefits at their job. So it's a way of social distancing, cutting down on the number of employees within an area, or even within the company during that time. But still, the employees, since they're working, still hold on to their skill sets and still know what's going on inside the company. So it's good for ramping down. But on the other side, it's also really good for ramping back up when you might not be able to bring all your employees back all at once. So it's a program, and we're approving those applications in about a week right now. We have by law 30 days, but we're turning them around right now in about a week's time. All you have to have is 3 employees to be eligible to sign up for that program. And there's more information on our website about shared work. So.
Okay. Belinda, I'm going to get to you about FFCRA, but first, that brought up a side question there, Dee and Erika, on what you talked about, and perhaps Belinda as well. I've had a couple of clients who work a full-time job, and then they have a side hustle. Let's say I have a friend who's a DJ, and so all of his side income has dried up, and he is actually has that established as a business, but he's still working his other job. What about him? I don't even know how to ask the question.
A person like that would have to apply for regular unemployment first. If they're eligible for regular unemployment, that's what they get. Now, when they file their weekly request for payment, we say, did you work during the week? If he happens to pick up any extra work, he has to declare those earnings. But those people would still be eligible, if they're eligible for unemployment, would still go through the regular unemployment system at that point.
Even though he has some alternative income from a different source.
And he would have to declare that, but that he would go through regular unemployment first to see if he's eligible. And if he's not eligible for regular unemployment, then there's, possibly an opportunity under the CARES Act to qualify for something else. But if they're eligible for regular unemployment, that is first and foremost what they're going to get.
Thank you. Belinda, can you speak to the FFCRA? Tell us what that is and what that means for small business owners.
Yeah, so we've been, and thank you, we've been working with a number of small businesses in the Kansas City area, and the confusion around the leave provisions under FFCRA has been amazing to me, so much so that, gosh, for a period of time there, we were on the phone from dawn till dusk. I think that people have a basic lack of understanding on how to apply the 2 major provisions, which is sick leave under FFCRA and then EFMLA, which is extended FMLA. For companies under 50, FMLA is a new thing to them. They don't even really understand the basic tenets of FMLA because it doesn't clip in until you're at 50 or more employees. But basically what it provides is a period of 12 weeks of job protected leave. EFMLA was introduced basically because the schools are out, daycares are closed, and what are people expected to do if they have to stay home and take care of their kids? I think a common misconception under all of that, and what most of our clients have done to sort of not circumvent it, but provide people with continued income, is to offer, telework opportunities, work from home opportunities. That sort of negates the need for EFMLA. But EFMLA provides for a period of up to 12 weeks of 2/3 pay for anybody that has to stay home with kids and cannot telework. However, on the flip side of that, we have, full-time workers working from home that are also expected to homeschool. That presents huge challenges with our workforce. And so trying to manage through that and help clients discern exactly how we should go about managing the balancing of their full-time work along with their family responsibilities has been something of a challenge. So, for most of our telework environments, I can clearly state that, gosh, I think maybe 3 people have utilized out of a possible workforce of about 5,000 EFMLA, just because they simply could not work from home. But the remainder of them, we're working with flexible scheduling. Can you do your job early in the morning and later in the evening to accommodate what you need to do during the day? Those are tricky questions, and we have to really be careful that we stay within the regs. And then the flip side of that is then the 80 hours of sick leave pay. There's been a huge amount of misconception around that too, because it is specifically pretty much sickness related, and it's sickness only in the event of COVID-19. The sick leave provision that applies to home care of children, et cetera, is at 2/3 pay. It's caused a huge amount of confusion, especially with our smaller companies. So the interpretation of that, if you haven't sought advice, and if you feel that you've been presented with a circumstance that may fall under one of those 2 provisions, you might want to chat to somebody.
Okay, thank you. Erika, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Belinda, and I would say the most common question that we've seen that causes confusion is people who are afraid to work, or they fear sharing a hotel room while traveling, even though that's the standard business practice. Things like that are not covered under paid sick. They actually have to be seeking a COVID-19 diagnosis or being treated for, or have the doctor's note, that they have been seeking diagnosis because of course testing may not be available, seeking the diagnosis or under a doctor's care to self-quarantine. So to Belinda's point, it's pretty tricky, but there are an enormous amount of workers who just are afraid, rightfully so, to go to work. However, their business and their job is deemed essential. And so just having that fear without seeking medical treatment is not eligible for the paid sick leave.
Mm-hmm.
I sense that we are getting through so few questions and have a lot more questions even pouring in. So I'm hoping that I can convince you all to agree to a second one of these at some point a little down the road. But I do want to ask one more question before we get into telling people some resources and things that they can look at. This is a big one that we've been hearing a lot about, is people saying, my employees tell me they're making more on unemployment now than what they would if they came back to work. So now they're refusing to come back to work. Can they do that? So let's start with D.
They can do that, but, and this is a big but, and we have this out on our website, labor.mo.gov/coronavirus, questions 1 and 2. They can quit or they can refuse work. But an employer also has the right to protest, and they have 10 days in which to protest. And there's instructions, a link that you can click to send a protest to us. If somebody does refuse, it's actually against the law to collect unemployment for the sake of collecting unemployment. So, while they can do it, there are ramifications for doing it. But the sooner an employer lets us know about that, the sooner we can stop their unemployment benefits. So, at that point, if you're not working and you're not collecting unemployment, I'm not sure what you want to do, but that is the way to close that down real quick. And there is a poster out there on questions 1 and 2 that an employer can use to post to actually say that to their employees.
All right. Anybody want to add to that, Erika? Or
yeah, that's a real situation that only occurred now that that $600 additional pay is coming. It's thrown the metrics off, and we have business owners that anticipate that. I haven't seen it. Most people are excited to be recalled back to work, but it is a real possibility, a calculation.
Yeah, it seems to be something that we're hearing very common. As again, like I said, we're running out of time for questions, but I'm looking over a couple here. Let's see. If I laid off my employees in March, but I'm bringing them back on payroll now that I've received SBA loan funds, do my employees still get unemployment for the weeks from March until now? Complicated.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
But I would caution, what we're also seeing is people applying for the loans and then back paying their employees who've already claimed weeks of unemployment. And what's going to happen is their employees are going to be overpaid unemployment and have to end up paying that back. So just an FYI, that could happen depending on how people are paying their employees.
A follow-up question kind of related to this is I have some clients who their clients, out of the goodness of their heart, are giving them money for services not rendered just because they're feeling bad for the business owner and saying, here, like a hairstylist maybe, and saying, I want to just pay you for this because I don't want you to go out of business. And then the question that this particular client gave me was, well, does that mean now I'm employed again and I can't collect unemployment if I take this gift, so to speak?
Now, if they've applied under the PUA claim and are qualified under that, one of the questions that gets asked every week is, did you receive any income for the week? That is income, whether you've worked for it or not. It would have to be declared. So, you know, would they get anything after that? Depends on how much money they're actually collecting. But that is the answer. The correct answer to that question is how much money that they've actually received that week.
And there's a lot of fear around all of this, the fear that if I do something wrong, I'm going to be convicted of fraud, or I'm going to lose what I have. And so that leads us into this short innovate part of this, is what can people be doing differently right now and preparing for more of this, because we don't know when this is going to end. So let's just go down the line, and each one of you. Belinda, let's start with you. What would your advice be? What can people be doing differently now and in the future to make this easier for them?
Well, basically, we've spent the bulk of the last few days, especially working with our clients with regards to PPP loans and what they should and could be doing with their employees right now, but also what they should be doing in terms of tracking. The details with regards to forgiveness are scant at best. On the surface of it, it looks as though payroll costs will be assessed the way they were for loan calculation. The other provisions, such as rent, lease agreements, utility payments, there's some real gray areas around that. So since we are in a position of, not having clarity, I'm recommending that they document everything down to the last nth, so that better to have more information than you need than not enough at the point at which you're asking for forgiveness. The flip side of that is, the reduction in PPP forgiveness in the event that their workforce is reduced. And if their workforce is reduced, I've read some where there's kind of a pro rata diminishment of the forgiven portion of the loan. So depending on each individual employer's circumstances, we're trying to counsel and get them through that. Some of the challenge that we have is some of our clients have had to close completely, meaning that, do they call their employees back to work somehow when there's absolutely no work to do, which seems kind of crazy. However, for the most part, most people have called back their employees if they've been fortunate enough to receive funds. That hopefully relieves the burden on unemployment. But it is a challenge given the fact that a lot of the client companies actually literally have no work right now. So,
Right.
so there's a lot of provisions of certainly under PPP that business owners need to be aware of. And it's just a challenge trying to get through that when we have little to no really solid information about how all of it's going to be calculated.
Right. Erika, what advice do you have for people, the things they can be doing differently right now?
On the PPP specifically, we are recording if the hours are worked on site versus worked from home versus paid and not worked. And so to Belinda's point, keeping track of those 3 pay codes, since we don't know what the banks, just like the application, there'll probably be 3 separate forms per bank on how to track and calculate this. But keeping the records of that is going to be critical. I would also, we get a lot of questions on if we're getting the credit for the paid sick leave, can we also apply those wages to the PPP? And our understanding is no. If you're not technically paying those wages because you're getting the credit to offset it, then no, that would not be counted towards the PPP. So you just want to keep that in mind as well if you have some people out on the sick or extended FMLA.
Dee, what advice do you have for people, things they could be doing differently now and in the future for crises like
Well, I will piggyback off of what our 2 other hosts here were saying is that if somebody is receiving any sort of sick leave, paid vacation, whatever types of leave, those also need to be reported to us because you can't basically double dip. You can't get unemployment and still be getting vacation pay from your employer or sick leave pay from your employer. So those do need to be reported. I think a lot of people are confused that there's a state unemployment program and then there's the federal assistance programs that are coming along. So you're not necessarily qualified for one or the other the same way, and the same rules don't apply to both of them. It's changing, every day, almost every day. We get new guidelines or clarification from the federal government. So I would say be patient, read everything that's available out there, from trusted sources like our sites, for unemployment, because that is the answer to most people's questions, and it avoids a lot of issues if they would read through that information to start with.
So while you're talking, I brought up the screen share for the Department of Labor. This is one click into the website for the COVID-19 frequently asked questions for businesses and workers. Dee said this is a good starting place. Was that correct, Dee?
Yes.
Okay, so start here. Rather than a phone call, correct, Dee?
Rather than a phone call, correct. There's a lot of answers right there on our FAQ pages about, say, unemployment particularly.
Sure. Belinda, is there anything, where would you say people go, where can they learn more? I have your website up. Is there anything you'd like to point out or talk about there?
Yeah, so we actually, we've spent a huge amount of time doling out free advice for the last 5 weeks, I think. We've started a little teeny tiny program where people can call us for a nominal fee to help them get through this stuff, just because we were burning a significant amount of time with free advice, which I absolutely don't mind, but goodness, it was kind of a lot. So that can be found literally on our homepage. It's a small program. You have the opportunity to ask individual questions. It's up at the banner at the top.
Oh, I see where it says COVID-19 questions, we have answers.
Yep.
Okay.
So
great resource. Erika, I was on your website for a moment and realized I was on the wrong one.
No problem. Our email is info@lever1.com, and that's just LEVER numeric 1.com. So.
Well, I thank all 3 of you for sharing with us today. I'm hoping that we can revisit this topic maybe in a couple of weeks. If you're willing, I'll be in touch with you, and because I have so many questions, and I know that we've been getting questions in the chat room, but I promised we would keep this webinar at no more than 30 minutes. So this will be posted. Don't forget to register for next week's webinar, Better Together Tuesdays. We'll be talking about how to gather your financial projections and writing that business narrative for loan applications. And a lot of people get really go into the fetal position when we talk about gathering financial projections. So we want to help make that simple for you. So make sure you pre-register for that. If you registered earlier, you might want to re-register because we had to swap up and make each one of these individual rather than signing up for all 3 of them. But that's it today. Thank you to Casey Sourceling for partnering with us. And you can find out more via their site as well as the SBDC website. And we'll be posting a recording of this on our social media and I believe several other outlets. Feel free to email me more questions and we will try to reschedule another one of these and talk some more about it. Thank you, Erika, Belinda, and Dee for being with me today. I appreciate you giving me your time when I know it's very limited right now.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful day, folks. We'll be in touch.